Okay, so in our last iPhone 16 leaks video, I went over some of the big changes coming to the A18 chip. And in this one, we've got 7 brand new leaks to talk about. Everything from capacitive button updates to leaked dummy units, leaked cases, and so much more. And I want to start off with some capacitive button updates. Economic Daily News reports that a Taiwan component supplier named Advanced Semiconductor Engineering has won Apple's order for the capacitive button inside the iPhone 16. This confirms what we knew from the CAD models before, that both the standard and the Pro models will introduce that new capture button, which will be a fully capacitive button dedicated for taking photos and videos. But what I think is quite interesting from this Economic Daily News report is that apparently Apple will be including 2 Taptic engines on each side of the iPhone. Right now, the Taptic engine is located on the left-hand side of the iPhone. Although I have to say that Apple has done an amazing job with their haptics, as whenever I'm using haptics on my iPhone, whether that is in the alarm clock app or even in our app wallpapers, whenever I scroll through the wallpapers in a pack, it doesn't actually feel like the haptics are only coming from the left-hand side. It feels as if they are coming from all around the phone. So it is pretty clear that Apple does not necessarily need a second haptic engine, unless of course they switch all of their buttons to capacitive ones instead. This was a rumor for the iPhone 15 Pro, which never ended up happening due to production issues. And apparently this idea then eventually evolved into Apple deciding to make that capacitive capture button. That being said, Economic Daily News do claim that Apple will replace all of their existing physical buttons on the iPhone 16s, including the power button, with capacitive ones instead. Personally, I don't believe this will happen with the iPhone 16s. And that's because we've also had some leaked cases that do have a specific cutout for that capacitive button and only the capacitive button. This right here is an iPhone 16 Pro case leaked by ZONEofTECH, and it clearly shows the right-hand side of the phone with both the power button and the capture button cutouts being visible. Now, the reason why I said that this case essentially proves that only the capture button will be capacitive is because that is the only one that has a cutout. The volume buttons and the action button on the left-hand side, even though they are really hard to see, you can see that there are no cutouts there at all. Capacitive buttons do require actual contact with your skin, otherwise they just don't work, reason why a cutout is needed. And Apple already has a bunch of products where this logic applies. Take the MacBook's Force Touch trackpad, for example, which is also capacitive. Now, try and press it with your sleeve, and you'll see that nothing will happen. Now, try and do the same thing on the click wheel of an iPod or the Magic Mouse. Unless your skin is in direct contact with its surface, you won't be able to use it. So then, what was this Economic Daily News report all about? Well, Mac Rumors did make a good point here, that if Apple were to add 2 Taptic engines, which according to the report they would only start manufacturing from the 3rd quarter of this year, that would already be quite late in the development cycle, which means that this full-on capacitive switch might only happen with next year's iPhones, not this year's. And we've also had another case leak, also from ZONEofTECH, this one showing the standard iPhone 15. We can tell this based on that vertical camera module, which does match up perfectly with the CAD models that we've had leaked before. And I know that it's quite hard to tell, but if you look closely, you can actually see a cutout for that capture button on these cases as well, also confirming that indeed, this is coming to all iPhone 16 models. Now, we've also had a number of leaked dummy units, 2 types, essentially. The first type being this blue one that was posted on Weibo, and these ones look to be made out of plastic, for the most part. While the second type being this one made out of metal, and these ones look far more polished. So what do these dummy units actually tell us? Well, for the most part, they both tell us what we already knew about the capacitive button, the larger sizes on the 16 Pro and 16 Pro Max, and the redesigned camera module on the standard 16s. But there is actually one key difference between these 2 dummy units, and that is the action button. You see, on these blue ones, the action button is much larger than on the 15 Pros. In fact, it is almost the same size as one of the individual volume buttons, whereas on the metal dummy units, the action button looks to be identical to the one on the 15 Pros. Now, I should mention that the lead CAD model for the iPhone 16 Pro does show that larger action button as well. So there is more evidence towards the action button getting larger than not. And personally, I do really hope that that is actually the case. Aside from this, Apple is apparently looking at adding ALD, or atomic layer deposition equipment to their manufacturing process, essentially to reduce lens flare and ghosting from their cameras. As we all know, iPhone cameras have a ton of lens flares at night. Now, Apple has made some improvements with the iPhone 15 Pro's camera, which has reduced reflections and lens flares, but the improvements were only very minor and lens flare do still persist. Phones like the Xiaomi 14 Ultra are known to be extremely good at handling lens flare. And that's because not only are the lenses co-engineered with Leica, but Xiaomi uses a number of different filters and coatings in order to reduce these. And before we move on to the next leak, I just wanted to let you know that we have now launched our 9th and final wallpapers pack of the month, Camo Canvas by Splashy. What's really unique about this pack is that it's got what looks to be a very complex design. However, since our wallpapers are in full 8K, you can zoom in a lot and use tons of different portions to create your ideal look from it. We've got 10 unique designs inside, with this first one being absolutely free for everyone. So simply download wallpapers for iOS and Android today to get Camo Canvas. Now, the display itself is also getting some upgrades. A new report from the Outlook claims that Apple is looking into making the bezels of the iPhone 16s even thinner by utilizing a new BRS, or border reduction structure technology. This essentially makes the screen circuitry more compact, enabling the bezels to be even thinner without compromising on the display's performance. Now, the bezels on the 15 Pro and the 15 Pro Max are already incredibly thin and really one of the thinnest on any smartphone out right now. And from the looks of it, these are set to be getting even thinner. And even though it isn't quite clear from the report if BRS will be used only on the Pro models or on all iPhone 16 models, I do believe that it will just be on the Pros, as number one, Apple has only reduced the bezel sizes on the iPhone 15 Pros and not the 15s, and then number two, only the iPhone 16 Pros are getting the larger screen sizes this year and not the standard models. Plus, since their sizes are not really changing as much as you'd expect, despite that 0.2-inch display size increase on the Pro models, I think it is very obvious that the bezels will for sure be getting thinner, which will make the 16 Pro Max especially look like a gigantic bezel-less display. Okay, now this next leak is a bit controversial. Essentially, it seems like Apple is looking at improving their titanium finish on the iPhone 16 Pros, and one of those changes may be that they'll switch back to a polished frame, which I think would be a very major step backwards. Like, I do agree that polished frames will always look more premium, but I was never a fan of how prone to fingerprints and smudges all stainless steel iPhones before the 15 Pros were. Personally, I much prefer a matte frame myself. In fact, I even think that Apple should actually make the frame of the 15 Pros even more matte than it currently is now, which would reduce fingerprints and smudges even more. I think that Apple absolutely nailed the frame on the black iPhone 15, and I would love to see a version of this come to the Pro models as well. Which brings us to the colors. Back in February, I did talk about a specific leak from iJinBoo that 2 of the iPhone 16 Pro's colors will be Desert Titanium, so kind of like copper, and then Titanium Gray, kind of like the color of the iPhone 6. Well, now we have another leak, this time coming from leaker Shrimp Apple Pro, and according to him, natural titanium and blue titanium would both be removed, and instead, we would get the 2 new colors that iJinBoo also reported on, a rose and then a gray, followed by white and a space black. Now, of course, the current black is called Black Titanium. Space Black is the name of the darkest color on the MacBook Pros, and then also what Apple used to use on the older version of the stainless steel Apple Watches. This ended up being replaced by graphite on the Series 7 and newer. Now, I should mention that if you buy an Apple Watch Hermes, you can still buy it in this super dark space black finish, so it's still there, just really hard to find. So based on this, it looks like we may even get an even darker version of the black titanium, which I'm definitely going to be a huge fan of. But let me know, what do you guys think of this, and then also all the other iPhone 16 leaks that I've talked about in this video. Definitely subscribe for more Leaks and Rumors episodes, and don't forget about that iPhone 15 giveaway that we're doing on our Discord. I'm Daniel, this has been ZONEofTECH, and I'll see you guys in the next one. ZONEofTECH, signing out. Cheers.